Congregation, we can turn our Bibles again to Matthew chapter 16. I'd like to read verses 25 through 27. Matthew 16, verses 25 through 27. There Jesus says, "For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? The Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father and with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works." Well, congregation, the end of the year is a good time for us to review. And we do this in many areas of life. We give ourselves checkups. We think of our health. Maybe you did this recently. Maybe you went for a health checkup, for a physical, a year-end review. Doctor, how am I doing? Or maybe you did this financially. Maybe you sat down with a financial advisor and reviewed your investments. How are things going? What's been my strategy for investing? And what have my returns been like? You wanted to review your financial position. Well, this evening, as we close the year 2021, we want to do the same thing spiritually. Let's give ourselves a review, a checkup. And notice that Christ here in our text, he draws a parallel between finances and our spiritual needs. You see that in the words he uses in verse 26. He's connecting these two. He's using an illustration from the financial world. He speaks of profit and of gains and of losing something and of exchanging something. These are all financial terms. And Jesus then is applying them to our life and to our soul. And he wants us to do a spiritual life checkup then. And so that's what we want to do tonight. And the big question I want us to seriously consider is, how are we investing our lives? How are we investing our lives? We only have one earthly life. We don't believe in reincarnation, so we're just given one shot. We have one chance at living on this earth. And another year has flown by. And so how is it going? How are you investing your life? That's our title this evening. How are you investing your life? We have 3 points. First, the losing investor. Second, the probing evaluation. And then third, the guaranteed return. How are you investing your life? The losing investor, the probing evaluation, and the guaranteed return. Well, as we begin, notice the context here of our passage. First of all, we need to look at who's talking to us. This is Jesus, the great teacher. We've seen he's the master using these questions, but he's not just any teacher. Christ has already made that point to the disciples. Who do men say that I am? And they're saying, lots of people are saying he's a prophet, he's a special man, he's a great teacher. But Jesus was never satisfied with that. He's not just a teacher, he's the Christ, Peter has said. He's God's anointed mediator who stands in the gap between God and men. And he's not just the mediator, but he is the Son of the living God. And so, congregation, that is who is speaking to us tonight. The Son of the living God, who is the Christ. He is addressing us. And notice here in our text who he's talking to. He's speaking to his disciples. He's drawn them aside to himself, and he's talking to them. And he's giving his people then instruction that they need to hear. things that his people need to think about, that they need to consider. He's talking to his people, but it's a mixed crowd, remember? Judas is there. And so those who are lost, like Judas, also need the instruction he's about to give. His people need it, and those who are lost need this instruction. And so what we're going to hear tonight is for all of us. We all need to hear what Christ is going to say, and it's known as one of his hard sayings. One of his hard sayings. And the first thing we find is the losing investor. This is in verse 25. And here in verse 25, Jesus sets before us two investors. He says, "For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." So there's these two investors, and these investors have two totally different investments. There's this sharp contrast. The one is trying to save his life, and the other one is okay to let his life go. Now, tomorrow morning, Lord willing, we will consider the second investor, the one who loses his life in the here and now to find it again. But tonight, we want to consider that first investor, the one who tries to save his life and who loses it. And notice a few things here with me. First of all, notice the investment of the losing investor. What is this person investing in? What are they committed to? What are they buying into? What are they trying to find happiness and their meaning in their existence? Where is that place? What are they investing in? Well, Jesus says, he holds up this one investor. He says he desires to save his life. So his life, that's the investment. And by this, Jesus means our present life, our physical existence right here, right now. That's what this person is trying to save and to have to the fullest, this present life, the experience of this physical world as we know it. He's this person that Jesus is picturing for us. This investor is one who's living for the period between the date of their birth and the date of their death. That's what they're living for, their life. Now, this is the ordinary investment that people make. We see this all around us. We see this all around us in the world. If you turn on the news, everything is time-bound. Every bad news report is bound by this life, and every good news report is bound by what's happening in this life. You never get a breaking news on the TV saying something like what Jesus says here. He's coming back. Take warning. No, you don't ever get that as bad news or good news. What we get is everything that's time-bound. And so this is the world we live in. We all naturally are surrounded by this reminder and this draw to live for the here and now. And this is natural to us. The natural man or woman, they're inclined to put all of their eggs into this basket of this life. That's what we do. This is how we come into the world. Our sinful, fallen human hearts, they stake everything on this life. This life, the here and now, that's what our hearts thinks is significant. This is what's real. This is what I can touch and feel and taste. And so this is real. This is reality. And that's it. Now, there are many ways to invest simply in this life. We could be consumed by harmful things. Maybe we're investing into things that are bad, we might say. Our life is consumed by drugs. Okay, that's one way to invest in the here, in this life. But there are many ways to be investing in this life only through good things, what we might say. Being consumed by good things, relationships, friendships, school, or work, or sports, or our health, or our family, or our house. These are good things, all good things. But this person that Jesus is describing here has made these good things the ultimate thing, the only thing. These things have become the treasure of their heart and the reason for their life. And so as we take a step back from this person that Christ is here setting before us, the one who desires to save his life, the main characteristic we can write over this person is that they believe that this life matters most. This life is what matters most. Now, they might not say it, but their daily decisions and choices confirm it. And that then makes this personal. How are we investing our life? What do our choices and habits say? What does the record of 2021, as we look at it in the rear view mirror, what does it say of us and our investment in life? Does it say that this life matters most? Think about the things we've thought about, the record of our thoughts in this past year. Just replay, what did we think about this past year? What filled our minds? What was consuming our thoughts? Was there any concern for the next life? And any thought of eternity? Any thinking of things unrelated or beyond or above or bigger than just this life? Any thought of what happens after death? We all would die unless Jesus returns first. Any thought? Or is our concerns only how to put food on the table or how to advance in my career or business? What about our actions? Those are just our thoughts. What about our actions? What do our deeds say? What have we been sweating over this past year to accomplish? How have we spent our time? Did we live like materialists who think that there's only this life? These are searching questions for us, of course. We're trying to figure out what are we investing in. But notice also there's a strategy. There's a strategy that this type of person uses. For everyone investing in this life, they're always using an aggressive investment strategy. That is, they're all in. They're putting everything into this investment. Look at what Jesus says, whoever desires to save his life. And that word there is whoever wills. There's this determination, this resolution, this commitment. Someone is here grasping onto this life, trying to make it everything for them, to live up to their expectations. The mindset is that this life is what matters. This life is all I have, and so I need to find satisfaction here. They're risking everything for right now and risking nothing for eternity. That's the person Jesus is describing. No thought, no energy, no comforts, nothing. Eternity isn't on their radar. And so they're not willing to sacrifice anything for it. And the question is, again, is Christ describing us? Is he putting his finger on our pulse? Has this been the heartbeat of our past year? Well, to give us a test that can help us assess our condition, we can think about this self-test. The self-test. And what I mean by that is that someone who is aggressively investing in this life is captivated with themselves. And so run the self-test on yourself. Someone who lives this way is absorbed in their self-centeredness. And it makes sense, as it were. Because if this life is all I have, then you're getting in my way. I have limited time. And so get out of my way and let me have what I want. Notice how Jesus draws this out. He says they're desiring to save his life. That's their concern. My life, not someone else's, but his life. There's this self-interest, this self-focus, controlled by a selfishness. And again, congregation, is that us? Are we stuck in this circle of self-interest where we can't get out of this circle? We're just bound by self-interest. All concerns are about myself. my health, my wealth, my desires, my needs, my plans, my dreams. That's it. I can't ever step outside of that circle to consider God and his desires or what he's after. Is this our life? No serious thought of God, our maker. No contemplation of eternity, of the next life. No consideration of our soul. Maybe for some of us in this past year, we spent sleepless nights caring about what others thought of us or concerned about what was going to happen tomorrow. Any sleepless nights about our soul, about eternity. We live in a world, again, that is so good at cramming down our throats that this life is all that matters. And God, in his grace, comes to us and tells us the uncomfortable truth in his word that no, there's more, that there's more. And so, friend, if that's been you, if that's been your 2021, where this describes your life, then you need to know that you are investing in your present life. You are desiring to save your life, as Jesus says. And what's the outcome of that life? Jesus tells us, whoever desires to save his life will lose it. They will lose it. This life, it's slipping away. You can clutch at it all you want, but the clock keeps ticking. The hours keep moving on. The years move on. We're all aging. We all get older. All of us are moving towards the day of our death. And then what? If this short temporal life is everything for you and I, then we have lost. Then we have lost everything. And so that's the point that we need to see, is that if we are investing everything in this life, then we are gambling our lives away. And we will lose it. Well, those are the losing investors. But notice, secondly, the probing evaluation. Again, Jesus stands before us this evening to probe us, to challenge us, to question us. And we can really picture ourselves as if we've been entrusted with this massive inheritance. Maybe it's as if we've been given millions of dollars. We're from a wealthy family, let's say, and we've just inherited all of that wealth, millions of dollars. And yet, throughout the course of this year, you who it's been entrusted to, you've been losing it. You looked at your bank account where it began and where it is now, and the funds are draining. You've been abusing what you've been given. You've been wasting it. And so now here at the end of the year, your financial counselor sits down with you, and he has some tough questions for you. He wants you to wake up before you lose it all, before it's all gone, and before you ruin yourself. And so it's not a pleasant visit. It's one of those visits you dread. He's here to challenge you. He wants you to realize what's happening before it's too late. And that's Jesus here tonight. He's challenging us spiritually. And his first question to stop us in our tracks before we head over a cliff is, what is the value of your soul? What is the value of your soul? Our Creator, he's here this evening, and he's asking us to think about this. Is that a thought that we've had over this past year? Have we thought about, what is my soul worth? I know that this life, it is meaningful. It is. And it is worth much. We have so much to be thankful for. But our soul, Jesus wants us to think about our soul. What is our soul worth? Notice how powerfully he does that in verse 26. He says, "For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?" And so here in this question, Jesus is showing us the true worth of our soul. He sets the whole world on one side, and he says our soul is worth more than that. Now, what is our soul? Well, our soul is our inner man. That's another way to describe our soul, our spirit. It's the seat of our reason, of our knowledge, of our emotions, and of our will. It's the part of us that will never die. We have a never-dying soul. And if you go back to the very beginning in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 in the creation, we find God there in Genesis 2 forming Adam out of the dust of the earth, and then God breathes into him. He breathes into him the breath of life, and there he makes man a living creature. He gives man a soul. And what a precious gift this was. God made humanity as the crown jewel of his creation. He made man in his image to reflect him. And he gave man a soul. And then he made a covenant with us. He wanted relationship with us. And our soul then, this seat of emotions, the seat of knowledge and reason, the seat of consciousness, our soul is that which has fellowship with God. We are spiritual beings, body and soul. And we can have fellowship with God because of our souls. Do you see how precious our souls are? It was the unique privilege that God gave to mankind to know him, to love him, to rejoice in him, to delight in him, to know him as all satisfying. That's what sets us apart from the animal kingdom. We're made in his image and we've been given a soul. But in our rebellion, through Adam, our soul is stopped functioning properly. We've stopped loving God. We've stopped delighting in him. We've stopped obeying him. And so the Bible says our souls are naturally now spiritually dead. We are spiritually dead. That is, we're morally dead. We're dead to God. We're insensitive to God. He made us to enjoy him, and now we're repulsed by him naturally. We run in the other direction. We're not attracted to him. We don't love him. We don't honor him. And so our souls are rightly under the wrath of God by nature. And so all of that is in view when Jesus says, "What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?" What does Jesus mean by losing his soul? He's talking here about losing your soul in an eternal hell. He's talking about this final punishment. And so Jesus wants us to consider this. He wants us to pull out the spreadsheet, as it were, just like if we were budgeting and we wanted to say, okay, I'm going to go into a business. I want it to be profitable. I want to make money. Okay, so I'm going to do this service. I'm going to sell this product. That's what I'm going to give up. I'm happy to sweat for a few hours to work someone's land or to sell them a product, as long as in return I get something back that's better than what I give up. And that's what Jesus is doing here. He's saying, what does it profit a man? Think like you think about everything else in this world. Just put out the balance sheet. Run the numbers. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul forever? Christ is saying that if we were to go to Fort Knox in Kentucky, Fort Knox is where the U.S. stores their treasury. Fort Knox has the most of America's gold in one place. You can Google it. It's this huge compound. There's billions of dollars worth of gold bars there. And Jesus is saying, if we were to go there and to look at all of these glittering gold bars, billions and billions of dollars worth, you'll never have to work a day in your life. You'll have everything you could physically want. You can buy it all. It's all yours. Jesus says, if you're to have that and you trade your soul to get it, we've made a terrible deal. Oh, we've made a horrendously bad deal. We can enjoy it for what, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, 80 years maybe? A tiny blip on the horizon, the span of eternity. And so he says, what profit is it to you if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Our Creator, the one who made the whole world and all that this world can offer, the one who made all that, and the one who also made our soul. He's weighing these things in the balance, and he's saying, your soul is worth far more. It's worth far more. Just like a rich person would give away all the wealth that they have if they could be healed from their debilitating disease. so too, this world is nothing if our soul goes lost. And so notice that here Jesus, he's actually appealing with us to our own self-interest. Isn't that amazing? He's appealing with those who are self-focused naturally, those who are enamored with themselves, those who are foolishly in love with themselves so much that they make a god out of themselves. Jesus is appealing to such on the basis of self-interest. He's saying, if we're choosing this world, we actually don't love ourselves nearly enough. We're actually robbing ourselves. We're stealing from ourselves. We're making a horrible deal for ourselves. Instead, we could go to this God who would make us, our souls happy in him, that we could find joy in this one, and yet we're choosing this world. So we don't love ourselves nearly as much as we ought to. Well, what is your soul worth? Again, notice who's asking this question. It's Jesus. It's our Creator. How much do you think he thinks our souls are worth? That's something we need to think about as well. Not only how much do we think our soul is worth, but how much does he think our soul is worth? That's a great question, especially as we look at the context. Notice Jesus makes it abundantly clear how much he thinks a soul is worth. If we read this together, if you go back to verse 21, from that time, Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and he must suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised the third day. Why must Jesus do that? Why did Jesus do that? He did this so that he might save the souls of sinners. How much worth does Jesus place on a soul? So much that he would leave the glories of heaven and come down and live for 30 years a life of sorrow and suffering, that he might go to the cross and die to redeem souls, to save the lost. And so, friend, if you want to see the true value of a soul, look to the cross. Look to what this Christ was willing to give up in order that he might redeem and rescue a soul. But there's also a second question. Not only what is a soul worth, what is your soul worth, but even more personal now, what will you exchange for your soul? That's what Jesus says. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? And this word exchange, it's a bartering term. He's picturing us walking through a marketplace. And it's not the stock market, as it were, but it's the soul market. What will we give for our soul? And so, my unconverted friend, if you're hearing what Jesus is saying, then take note. What are you trading for your soul? Make a list. Write it down. Be honest with yourself. At least on this last day of the year, be honest with yourself. If you've been exchanging your soul in order to have the world, at least have the courage to write it down what you're trading your soul for. Put it in black and white on the paper. This is what I'm willing to exchange my soul for. And my friend, as you do that, I hope you see how foolish it is. How foolish it is to give away our soul. This takes us to our third point, the guaranteed return. Notice verse 27, for the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his work. Christ here is guaranteeing that he will return. And notice he uses that title, Son of Man. This is that exalted title taken from Daniel 7, verses 13 and 14. There, the Son of Man who receives from the Ancient of Days this glorious kingdom where everyone will serve him forever, for eternity. It's a universal, eternal kingdom. The Son of Man, Jesus says, is going to come back. This regal title that describes the King of Kings, the Son of Man, he will come back. And he will come back in that kingly glory. In that splendor, that's why he says he's coming back in the glory of his Father. Right now, he's walking probably in not very nice clothes. He's walking headed ultimately to a cross, to suffer and die on a cross. But as he says it, he promises, he guarantees, I will come back in glory with all authority, with all dominion. There will be a triumphant return. And his angels will accompany him. The angelic armies of heaven will come and they will be with him in the sky. And every eye will see this King, the Son of Man, and will see the glory of this one. And he's returning for a special purpose. He's returning to judge. He says, then he will reward each according to his works. Now, congregation, Christ doesn't lie. He doesn't lie. And so he has guaranteed that he will return. So we can mark our calendars. We don't know the day, but we know that this is a certain fact. There's a day coming. And is that day in 2022? There's a real possibility. We don't know. But he has told us he's coming back. And because Christ will return, that guarantees the return on how we invested our lives. We speak about return of investment. What's your ROI? Well, the return on this spiritual life investment is going to be no surprise. It's no surprise because Jesus has stated it clearly. Notice there is the guaranteed worst case scenario for all who reject him. The guaranteed worst case scenario for all who have rejected him. For those who have despised their souls, those who didn't want fellowship with this God, who didn't want his saving rule in their life, they are guaranteed the worst case scenario. Then he will reward each according to his works. And so, friend, that means we will get what we deserve. If you're not a believer, your sinful deeds will earn a reward of punishment. Every sinful thought, every sinful word, every sinful act, we will lose our life, as Jesus has said. That means not only death, but eternal pain, eternal hell, the suffering of being under the wrath of this God forever. What a horribly wasted investment of a life that is. That's what Jesus wants us to hear. He wants us to be scared of that return, if that's our life, so we might flee from the wrath to come, that we might run. That life leads to ruin. And in contrast to that, there is a guaranteed best case scenario for all who have received Christ. There's a guaranteed best case scenario. Christ will reward you for your works. Now, we need to be clear on this point. We are saved by God's grace alone, on the basis of Christ's work alone. There's no room for any boasting in our works or our merits. Everything hinges on our soul's relationship to Christ, and through Christ then to God. If we're united to Christ by faith now, looking to him, trusting him, following him, then we have fellowship with God. Then we are God's. We're his children. God loves us dearly. We've been reconciled. But the Bible, it also consistently teaches that God's grace, it works a difference in the Christian's life. God's grace works in the Christian so that it changes us. His Spirit then empowers us to do good works out of thankfulness to him, out of love for him. And these are good works that he has already prepared before the foundations of the world, Ephesians 2:10 says, that we might walk in them, that we might be the ones doing them, but doing them by his grace. And so, if in this life you have seen the value of your soul, and you've seen the reason why Christ came, and you've recognized that he died for sinners like you and I, and you've embraced him and you've trusted him and you've been living for him, not perfectly, far from perfectly, often stumbling, often going out of the way, yet living for him, then there is the best case scenario coming your way. Better than we can ever imagine. He is going to reward his own work of grace in our lives abundantly. And this is what Christ wants his people to know. He wants them to know this. Child of God, he wants you to know the unspeakable joy and glory that lies ahead. And he doesn't want you to live with these things out of mind. And so as we've come to the end of 2021, and for many of us, maybe a difficult year, a year where there's been much pain, much difficulty, yet how many reasons to rejoice? How many reasons to rejoice? Not only in this life have you seen God's providential care, but the best is yet to come. This God has so loved you that he has come, that his Son has come to save you from your sin. He has come to endure a cross, a dreadful cross, so that he might welcome you for eternity into the splendors and joys and glories of all that awaits. To be with him, to be with the Lamb who was slain from the foundation of the world, to be in his perfect fellowship, to not be then living that me-centered life anymore, but to be living that Lamb-centered life, and for eternity, to be knowing his presence and his perfect fellowship. That's what's ahead. Yes, we don't know what's ahead in 2022, but we know that this is the certain reality for all who are united to Christ by faith. The joys and the glories. Well, congregation, how are we investing our lives? Are we gaining the world to lose our soul? Won't you give up this losing investment strategy if that's been your life? Won't you listen to Christ's call in verse 24? If anyone desires to come after me, don't you hear that open invitation? Christ here, arms open wide tonight, saying, if anyone sees the folly of the one way of living for this world, then if anyone wants to come after me, desires to come after me and have your eternal destiny changed, then come. That's what he's saying. At the close of this year, wouldn't that be a beautiful way to close 2021 by closing with Christ? By finally getting up and going to God and saying, Lord, I need you. I desperately need you. Be my God. Be my Savior. Jesus says, if anyone, and he means anyone. No, there's no other conditions there. If anyone, they're welcome. And so come and invest your life in Christ by denying yourself, taking up your cross, and following him into the joys of the life everlasting. Amen. Congregation, let us sing Psalter 103, stanzas 1 through 4. Psalter 103.